Good morning, my name is Chrsi-tell from Frans the Klerk Independent Technical Analysts. We had a request for Dischem and we can see that this share bounced nicely from oversold levels. My stochastic is sitting on a 37, but more importantly, last week's candle is a beautiful example of a spinning candle. Both tails on either side of the real body is almost the same in length, and that implies indecision. The traders and investors are not sure whether they want to continue to accumulate and buy the share, in other words, the price will rise, or whether they want to start to take profit when meaning the price will decline. Now, the strong level of resistance that has to be overcome is waiting at last week's high, and that is waiting at 24.95. That is when my next higher low will be confirmed. What is positive about Dischem at the moment is the fact that my positive divergence is still in place. Both lines in my stochastic is still pointing upwards, and there is clear higher lows on the lower shadows of the candle. Now, this candle is still in the making. That candle will only be finished by Friday's close, but that high of last week is a critical level that needs to change into a support in order to sustain the momentum to the top. And below last week's low of 23.06, you can sit closer to the graph and almost become nervous, because that means that the selling pressure might continue. Very important, our 40-week moving average is still a resistance, waiting at 28.11. And we can see, if we look at the past, that level was critical to keep the momentum to the bottom in place. So we can assume that once the share managed to overcome that 28.11 and change it into a support, that the momentum to the top can continue, and that will also change the long-term sentiment towards the share to positive. Clicks was the second one on the list. This share is almost overbought at the moment, right? Sitting on a 75, a stochastic is seen as overbought when it's above an 80 or especially a 90. But again, candles don't lie, and this was a beautiful example of a dragonfly doji candle appearing at the bottom of a pullback, implying that, hey, this might be the turnaround the share is waiting for. My 40-week moving average is a critical level that needs to change into a support, waiting at 272.76. Once that level changes into a support, the long-term sentiment will change to positive, and we can assume that the momentum to the top will be in place. I want to go back to the history, and we can clearly see that this double top formation did not lie and was a warning formation that took this share a lot lower. Yes, it did not completely play out. I think the full price for that double top formation was around 223 Rand. It found support just above that. Also a lesson there that all the targets of the formation it's not a guarantee. It doesn't mean it has to play out. It's a possible level that the formation can take the price to, either upwards or downwards. The strong support on clicks that has to remain in place is waiting at 256.98 Rand. Below that level, we can expect some downside and maybe another profit-taking trend. Tesla is listed on the Nasdaq, and at the moment, the momentum to the top is clearly in place. There was a beautiful cup and handle formation with two handles that took this share to higher levels. Now, the full target of this cup and handle formation is the length of the cup portion of that formation, projected upwards from the neckline where that formation was confirmed, meaning the possible target for Tesla is $314.58. Does it have to go there? It's a possible target, doesn't mean it must go there. But also take note that if I go back, this is very close to previous strong resistance levels there in August and September of last year, waiting there around 313.78. So should that level also change into a support, we can expect even higher levels on Tesla. But a clear strong resistance that, again, as in last year, September last year, if the sellers are stronger, we can expect some downside. Also on my stochastic, both lines is still pointing upwards, implying that the momentum to the top is clearly in place. My 40-week moving average is a strong support at the moment. That's waiting at $191.74, confirming that the long-term sentiment is in place. Also take note, or a little bit of a warning or a caution comment here, is that this is an example of a lamp pole formation. Massive risings in a very short period can become very dangerous because the foundation of the rising or the incline to the top is not sound and not deep enough, which means that should profit taking start to take place, it can quickly come down as quickly as it rose to the top. What I'm trying to say here is that be aware that should this formation or should this share start to turn around, it can quickly decline. Doesn't mean it have to, but that lamp pole formation is a warning and a caution to say, listen, this incline to the top might have been too steep, too strong, too soon, and that you should be aware of that. I mean, about 6-7 weeks of complete upward momentum for Tesla at the moment. Doesn't mean it cannot continue. I mean, it's a favorite for many. And also that you, let me just highlight this at the moment. Very, very important. A window on a weekly graph should never be ignored. And my trend lines still have flew. I don't know why they shake like that. Anyway, nevertheless, let's leave that. There's a gap there, a window that is not completely closed. Oh, it's just closed. Interesting. That window and that gap closed at $260.47, right? The high this week is $263.60. So it closed the gap. That means the target price has now been reached for that window, because remember, the rules around windows are they always get closed. It can take days, months, weeks, or decades. And that is also act as a target. Should the buyers continue to support the price for higher levels, it acts as a target for the upside. And should the buyers be not strong enough, it can also act as a resistance levels. And we can assume that the momentum to the bottom remains in place as long as the window remains open. But I mean, the window is now closed, so don't be surprised if profit taking starts to take place, because that gap, that window on Tesla is now completely closed. JetBlue Airways, also listed on NASDAQ at the moment, coming from nicely oversold levels. Unfortunately, my stochastic is already in mid-zone, trading at a 58, but beautifully my 40-week moving average has now changed into a support. We are possibly sitting here with a left shoulder, a head, and a possible right shoulder. And only when the high of this left shoulder, waiting at $8.35, only when that level changes into a support, will the warning of this head and shoulder formation be off the table, and can I take a sigh of relief and assume that the momentum to the top can continue again. There's also a beautiful window there, a gap just the low of that candle is waiting at $9.47. That high is at $9.35. So a small gap there that can act as a target for JetBlue Airways. My 40-week moving average is the base. It's the support that has to remain in place, and that is waiting at $7.43. We can see in the past, back here in Jan-Feb, the beginning of this year, how the share struggled to keep the 40-week moving average a support and took the share lower. And again, back here in February and March of 2022, same story. There was just not enough buyers to take the share price through the 40-week moving average. So that is the critical level for JetBlue Airways that has to remain in place, $7.43. And we assume that the long-term sentiment towards the share will remain positive as long as that 40-week moving average remains a support. So my first target will be the high or the bottom part of that window, that gap, and that is waiting at $9.35 that JetBlue can possibly go to, or even close that gap that is waiting at $9.47. Don't forget to send through your requests via Twitter or email at to admin@fransdeklerk.com if you want us to discuss your request. Have a fantastic week. Take care.